Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my overview of Arco. For those on across it, I do overviews on this channel, which is where I have a look at the first 2 hours of a game. That's the Steam refund window. Steam says you can make up your mind about whether you want to keep a game or not in that time period, and broadly speaking as a rule, I would agree, and say that 20 hours in, you're probably not going to change your mind about how you felt 2 hours in. So it's a short, punchy video, keep it around about 10 minutes, broad strokes info, and then you can make up your mind on your own. Let's lead with this and not beat around the bush. Arco is absolutely fantastic. This is one of the coolest little indie games that I have played this year easily, and if you fancy yourself, well, for lack of a bit of a wanky term, a bit of an indie enthusiast, I really would recommend, if you come to this channel regularly and trust my recommendations, pause, drop everything, pick this up, you will not regret it. So, it's swinging pretty strong out of the gate. For those still here, not entirely convinced, let's delve a little bit deeper. Arco has a few moving parts to it, and on a sort of overarching meta construction level, it has a bit of a vignette Western vibe. You know, Buster Scruggs-esque mini stories tied together. In fact, it actually kind of reminds me of Hard West 1. Not just the Western theme, but it would seem that they apparently go together incredibly well, the idea of vignetting little chapters with a Western theme. But if you understand what I mean, these kind of little mini stories, episodics if you will, tied together, all part of a kind of fully realized interesting world, you've got the idea. And while this is definitely Western-ish, the game touts itself as Mesoamerican, which is a cool little catchphrase, but it explains it quite perfectly. This is not your traditional, let's say, Northern Americana Western view. This is much more of a, oh, well, you know, look, I'm going to butcher all the correct terminology, but bear with me, you know, but like more of a Spanish Mexican way of looking at it. So all your cowboys and all that sort of stuff seem to be of that kind of Latin persuasion, right? But underpinning that, instead of sort of a Native American tribal component, you have more of a variance from your more kind of Mexicana type villages. But, you know, in this current chapter, and I don't really want to give it away because it's such a magical world, it's really well put together, but like I'm getting into that more Aztec-y jungle type, almost Mesopotamian sort of angle. Anyway, that's what I'm saying. Like, it definitely has that Western gunslinger vibe, but, you know, kind of almost done through a more South American perspective. Anyway, it's really cool. But yeah, what an absolutely unusual premise, but really well realized. Not period piece, but definitely its own bits and pieces of different periods thrown together to create something pretty unusual. Anyway, as the game plays out, so far I've sort of played kind of 2 chapters. One was more prologue-y, and then now where I was playing sort of like a young village boy trekking with his family. And then look, on top of that, you've got a more like a colonial, I know these are sort of red flag terms in current writing because it's generally handed so fucking ham-fistedly and brazenly, it just sucks. But it works here, right? So you have these guys called newcomers, and they very much are insert, you know, Western cowboys colonizing across your land sort of thing. But again, it's not on the nose. These are more just moving parts and factions interacting with each other. The first scenario had me playing as like a young, you know, sort of impatient, energetic village boy, and it serves as a tutorial, but like you're moving with your family to go to like a sort of a shrine to pay respect, and you know, you get to meet his family and chat with it, and it's the art you can see is very cool and very cute. Like you're moving around, your little, I'm using my hands, your little dude sort of bops around, and like it's a great way of doing animations with very little. But yeah, like in that first chapter, you kind of explore the sort of familial, spiritual undertones of that aspect, and then you come up against the newcomers, and you know, plot ensues. And in the second one, you're a bit more of a fistful of dollars kind of Eastwood stand-in, but with a big old bloody guapo mustache, and which is great. Mustaches get my thumbs up every time. And that sort of starts off with, you know, reuniting with a friend that turns into a bit of a revenge sleuthing, following the paper trail, trying to hunt down the people who wronged you, and I'm moving around the sort of open map, coming up against such other factions and doing little missions for them and helping out. But he's very much a grumpy old strong silent type thing, but again with that Mexicana feel. It's so refreshing, but it shouldn't be, honestly. This should be the norm. When we have such a market with so many fucking different games, you know, it's a flooded market. Why don't we have a million different Arcos? Anyway, that's a little bit of an aside, but it kind of gives me the shits. Like, you would think there would be more of this. So yeah, this is an absolute gem. So you move around the open world, hopping around, you know, you can't quite quick travel, but when you move from edge of the map to edge of the map, you get a map and you can click on it, and your dude can kind of auto path there, going through areas that you've already tracked through. So it's all very cute and well realized. But then when you get into the actual combat, it has this sort of turn-based layout that is very well designed in the simplistically refined, but then depth springs from that. And I talk about this all the time. A lot of people think simple means like a negative, but then I try and contrast it against games that are complex for the sake of complexity, where they become unpleasant to play and unfun. This is really well considered and very addicting, and your dudes have their own unique sort of level up tree as they get experience from fight to fight. So again, from the two different scenarios, two different sort of skill sets majoring in different things. And like, I've recruited a sort of sidekick gun for hire, so I've got kind of a party of two, and he's got a mini RPG tree, and like, for example, that dude's more about quick melee, and there are these little rules, like, if you do shoot a weapon, like I'm very much more bow and arrows, because, you know, your protagonist's view seems to be more of that kind of tribal, indigenous component, whereas you do come up against bandits and newcomers with like guns, and that comes into it. Like, you know, the bow and arrow is still quite lethal, but it's not necessarily as fast as a gun. And, you know, we've got shotguns doing spread bullets that you need to dodge, but you got rifles that are not hit scan, but they're very fast particle. But yeah, you plug in your I go, you go move sort of thing, and the enemy telegraphs above their head what they're going to do, and you're trying to create space so that if they melee, it falls short. Melee kind of trumps missiles when it comes to like sort of how the turn plays out, but it does play a bit loose with it as well, which keeps it kind of a bit guessworky, which is great. You know, sometimes spelling out all the rules of the system takes away a bit of the magic. So if you do have a more melee character, getting right up in someone's face and trying to hit them before they pull the trigger is a legitimate move. Whereas if you just don't have the gap that you can close and they're going to fire a gun, you might have to piss fart around and sort of dodge and move around a little bit. And you get all sorts of different dodges, some jumps, teleports. You know, it's playing with a bit of a fantasy component to it as well. There's also this kind of guilt mechanic, which is interesting. I want to say almost a bit of a gimmick, because it's not played out super well. It's not played out very much so far. Like, if it was more of a, let's say, core mechanic or part of the appeal, you would think they would sort of front load this a bit more, but it hasn't really come up. However, it could come down to my character's choices. So you do get some choices when you interact, and if you kind of do wrong by people, you get a guilt component that weighs heavy on your soul. A bit mysterious until you realize that when you're in combat, you can have these little sort of, I don't know what to call them, ghosts that will manifest as part of your character's guilt. And the really interesting thing is that they kind of attack you outside of the turn-based paradigm. So while you're kind of sitting and calculating a la turn-based how you're going to fight these dudes, these guilt ghosts, we'll say, can appear, and they actually just keep moving in real time. So it sort of makes you rush your turn a little bit. Now, they'll disappear after a couple of turns, so you can kite them around a little bit, but it's cool. Like, it's not quite full-blown psychosis, your dude seeing things, but it is an interesting, if you think about it, like an actual mechanical way for guilt to weigh heavy on a character. Because at the end of the day, usually when it comes to morals and those components in video games, people struggle to turn them into realized mechanics. Consider the biggest depth still to this day is kind of binary good and evil, and either you miss out or you unlock trees of, you know, bloody, I got the bad guy armor, or now I can unlock this necklace because I was nice to someone. So while this is abstract, in a way, it's still mechanically sound. You go around and you start robbing people and fucking them over and all that, these ghosts are going to start making your combat a bit more stressful. I think that's brilliant. Anyway, look, I think I've covered the broad strokes. I don't really want to spoil what little story is there. I don't know how long it will go for, but I am absolutely smitten, and this is such an absolute gem and one of those examples of why I do this, why I frenetically play lots of different games on this channel, because eventually you're going to find this. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.